Hello and welcome to this video walkthrough of assignment number 11 for CPI 111. For assignment 11, we're going to create a simple space shooter game. And to create the game, we're going to use and modify an example project that's on the Blackboard site. To start things off, I'm going to show you the final product. This is where we will get to and what you will submit for your assignment. You'll have the space shooter game where you can fire upon spaceships. Spaceships will be firing at you. Each time your ship gets hit by a bullet or the enemy ship, you'll lose a life. I'll show you. And after you lose 3 lives, then you start the game over. Also, in the playing of the game, you will see the score appear on the screen. It may not be showing up at this moment. I'll have to show you how that looks. In order to show you how it looks, I have to extend out my view a little bit here. I shrunk in my window so that we could see it here in the scene. So you might not be able to see the ship in this recording, but you'll see the score. So part of the assignment is also to include a score tracking. Each time you hit a ship, then you get some points. If I can hit one, you get 10 points every time you fire on a destroyed enemy ship. Okay, that's where we end up. Now let's move back and start off with the downloadable sample project on the Blackboard site and work our way up to what we just looked at. Okay, to download the starter program that you're going to then modify for assignment 11, you're going to want to go to the Blackboard site and go into the assignments folder, and then scroll down until you find assignment 11, and you'll see it there as a zip file, chapter 11, completed game 1.zip. Download that to your local computer, unzip it, and then inside that folder you will find another folder, which is the one that contains this project. To open up that project, you'll go to File inside Unity, Open Project. Then from here you'll choose Open Other. Then you're going to hunt down that folder. So here it is. Here's my Chapter 11 source file that I unzipped, and inside that I've got another folder called Chapter 11 Source. And if I select that, Unity will then import all of the assets from that folder and open it up as a project inside Unity. I'm not going to do that right now because I've already got it open, but you'll want to do that. Now let's take a look and see what the game looks like that you are starting off with. As I'm showing you the starter file here, mine will look slightly different than the one you'll be looking at because mine already includes all of the scripts and a scene that includes the final version of the game. As well as the starting version. Yours will have only the starting version. Mine also will have some extra scripts and things. Alright, so here I am. I've got the game scene open, and if I hit play, you'll see the one you're starting with has the ship already in here, and it can fire bullets, and it's got the enemy ships coming down from the top of the screen. But when the enemy ships hit our hero's ship, nothing happens. And there's no score appearing on the screen. And there's really only one enemy ship inside our game. And for the assignment, we need to have a couple of additional enemy ships. I can, however, fire at the enemy ships to destroy them. So we're partway there. So let's take a look at the scripts that come with the starter file. Actually, before we get into the weeds of looking at the existing scripts and talking about how we modify them, let me give you a quick overview of what the goals for this assignment are and how you'll be graded. So, assignment number 11 I'm calling sort of AI. It's not true artificial intelligence, it's not even minor artificial intelligence, but it's the beginning of an introduction that we will continue with in the next week's lesson. So the objectives of today's assignment are to implement a very basic level of AI. It's not for the enemy's behavior, how to develop that system and how to manage the scoring and lives in a game. The due date is listed here. Depending on when you're viewing this lesson, the due date may be different. Make sure to check with the instructor in class. When you submit your assignment, you're going to submit a zip file, which includes the game published out for Windows, 32-bit please, and the accompanying data folder. To make this assignment work, you're going to need to download the zip file posted in the assignment section of the Blackboard site, as I mentioned. And here's what you're going to do. You'll take this starter program, and we're eventually going to add a couple more enemies to the game. There'll be 3 in total. But before we add those additional enemies, we're going to modify the single enemy that's already in the game. We're going to change the way that the enemy ships appear at the top of the screen a little bit. Currently, the enemy moves down the screen starting at a random X position, so random horizontally. It'll appear somewhere at the top of the screen, but we don't know quite where. So we're going to modify that a little bit so that when the ships appear at the top of the screen, they're going to appear above the hero ship, plus or minus some coordinates on the x-axis. So it's going to make it a little tougher, because rather than appearing at random, we'll have the enemy ships are in a sense sort of honing in on our hero ship, but not being straight above our hero ship. If that makes sense. We'll take a look at what that looks like in a minute. And we also are going to make our enemy ships more deadly by having them shoot bullets at our hero ship. Or, more accurately, we're going to have our enemy ship shoot bullets toward the bottom of the screen, rather than aiming directly at the hero that is be shooting down. So that's 5 points, and then 3 points. That's most of the assignment. Also, we're going to add to the starter program lives. We're going to set 3 lives to start with, and then we're going to reduce the number of lives each time our hero ship gets hit by an enemy's bullet or gets run into by an enemy ship. And we're going to add a scoring system and display. Starts at 0, and each time the player shoots an enemy ship, then the player gets an additional 10 points. So that's where we're heading. So here we are again in our sample program. Let's take a look briefly at what we've got in here to let us know where we're going to go. So here's our hero ship, and our hero's ship has a script attached to it called, shockingly enough, hero ship. So let's open that up and see what it looks like. In this beginning version of our hero ship program, we've got just a few things going on. We are going to play a sound when the hero ship fires a bullet, so we are passing it an audio clip name, and we're going to pass it a particle system that is an explosion. We played with explosions a little bit in class. And we're going to pass it a prefab bullet. Then we just have an update function. And what our update function is going to do is it's going to cause the hero ship to follow the mouse around the screen left and right. So we're going to take the position of our hero ship and just update it to match the position of the mouse divided by 20. Then we're going to check if the player is pressing the left mouse button, and if so, we're going to play our firing sound, and then we're going to instantiate an instance of our bullet prefab and then position it appropriately, basically positioning it right above our hero ship. Right? So that's all that's going on so far in our hero ship object. Now let's take a look at the enemy ship. There's a bit more going on with the enemy ship to start with. Here's our script for that. For the enemy ship, we also have an update function, and what the update function here is doing is simply moving the enemy ship from the sort of top of the screen downward at a given speed. So we've got a variable here for speed, which is an integer, so we can increase or decrease the speed at which our ship moves from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen. This will be useful when we create a couple more ships, because we can have some ships that go slower and some ships that go faster. We're also rotating our ship object around to make it look like a buzzsaw. That's what's happening right here. And here's where we actually are going to change the position of our enemy ship by calling a function which is going to check if the enemy ship is at the bottom of the screen, and if so, it's going to then shoot it back up to the top of the screen. And then here's a very important line right here. Right now what's happening is that when the enemy ship reaches the bottom of the screen, it moves back to the top, and then we set its horizontal position to some random number between -11 and 68, these sort of oddly picked numbers. We're going to modify that, as I mentioned, as part of the assignment, so that we cause the position to be above our hero ship plus some random number. We also have a function called explode that simply plays an audio clip, and it will randomly select one of 5 different explosion noises that we've got. I'll show you that in just a minute. Then it will instantiate the explosion prefab and play it on the screen. And then finally, we have an onTriggerEnter function. This is going to check when something intersects with our collider around our enemy ship. And if it gets, if something runs into our enemy ship, we're going to play the explosion, and then we're going to reset the position of our enemy ship back to the top of the screen, and then we're going to check what it was that the ship collided with. And if it collides with a bullet, which is just an object that we tag with the string bullet, then we're going to destroy the bullet. And then we've got an else if, where we're not actually doing anything yet, where we check whether or not they've collided with the hero ship. So we're going to make a lot of changes to this in our assignment today. Okay. I'm also going to take a look at our prefabs and take a look at our bullet. Now remember, we're going to instantiate the instances of this bullet prefab. And when we instantiate them right now, all we're doing is just placing them on the screen, but they don't actually move. So on the prefab of this bullet itself, we've got a script called bullet, and that script is the script that causes the bullet to move. So we've got a start function in here where we set the velocity of that bullet, and what we're doing here is we're saying we want, when that bullet appears, we want it to start moving toward the top of the screen at 100 units per step. And then in our update function here, we're simply checking that if the bullet reaches the top of the screen, then we want to destroy the bullet. So that's basically the main interactions within this starter file. We've got a few other things going on. We've got our usual directional light, we've got our main camera, we've got a space camera that is rendering this star field, and then we've got the star field itself. That's where we're starting. Now let's move forward. As we start making modifications to our starter game, we're going to do something that will help sort of protect our starter game project in the case that we make some sort of mistake. So what I'm going to do is, and I want you to do, is take your game scene and do a save as, and then rename it something that will help make sense. So I'll call mine game, let's see, assign 11. Okay. That way that your initial scene that is working as a basic level won't get screwed up if something happens and something goes wrong. It's a good idea, of course, to do this all the time as you're building projects in Unity. If you're about to make some major change, it's a nice idea to save the scene in its current state by doing a save as and then continuing to work from that new scene. It won't protect you if you make changes to the actual assets, because those changes will ripple out across all your scenes. But it's still a good habit to get into. So we've saved this, now we're in our newly named scene. And if you remember The first thing we need to do inside our game for assignment 11 is we need to change the way that our enemy ship is positioned when it starts up at the top of the screen and works its way down. It's appearing at random at the moment. We're going to modify it a little bit so that it appears above the hero ship plus or minus some random amount. So think for a moment, before I show you how we're going to do this, how you could make that happen. How are you going to figure out how to position that enemy ship above the player ship? All right, pause if you want to, and then I'll continue and tell you how you can do this. So you can position the enemy ship above the player ship by grabbing the position of the player's ship and then assigning that position to the enemy ship. Now, you don't want to assign the whole position, or your enemy ship would appear directly right on top of your player ship. Instead, what you want to know is what is the X position of your player ship. Then you'll place your enemy ship at that same X position, and then you'll add to that X position some random value. All right, to make this all work, just like you saved your scene with a new name, to really be safe, you should take the existing script, we're going to work with the enemy ship script, and save it with a new name as well. To do that, you simply open it up in MonoDevelop, and then do a file save as, and give your script a different name. So I've already done this. I've called mine enemy ship underscore assign. So let's take a look at that. Now, in the version I'm looking at here, I've got lots of things commented out because we're going to work up towards the final version. Right now, though, we're just focusing on this reset position function. In the original version of the script, if I open that up, you'll see that on our reset position function, we're setting the X position of our enemy ship to a random number between -11 and 68. So to change it so that it appears above the player ship, here's what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to create a new public variable. I'm calling it hero ship, and it's going to be a variable of type game object. This variable is going to point to our hero's ship, the game object. Then, in our reset position function, we're going to set the position of the enemy ship equal to the X position of the hero ship's transform component plus, again, a random number. This time I changed it. You can play with these numbers however you like. I set mine to be -40 and 40. So we'll get a random number between those two values plus the position of our enemy ship. To test out changes that you make, you can come back into Unity, select the enemy ship, come over to the script, and you'll see that the default script has a bunch of variables already associated with it. We've got the speed that the ship is going to be moving set to 50. We've got a prefab for the explosion set to an explosion prefab that was built into the starter game. Then we have an array of audio files, explosion 1 through explosion 5, and our script is randomly choosing one of these explosion sounds to play whenever the enemy ship blows up. If we want to keep these variables here and not have to put them all in again, the way to do that is to come over to your project, grab the modified version of your enemy ship script, and drag it over and drop it on. When you do that, you'll see it doesn't wipe out these settings. It simply adds the new public variable, which is hero ship. So I'm going to drag my hero ship and drop it onto that spot. Save your file and test it. Now our ships are coming down, and it doesn't seem wildly much different. You can see they're coming down to the left or the right of our ship, but I wouldn't say it's all that much harder. So I might play around a little bit with the values inside my enemy ship assignment script. And the values I might play with are these ones on the reset position here. Maybe I'll change these to be a little smaller, like 20 and 20. Save that, come back in here and try that one out. Now as the ships are coming down, you'll see that they're all coming pretty close to my player. So they're sort of honing in, and if my player moves over here, then they start coming down over in that area. So that's step one of the assignment already done. Let's move on to the next step. The next step is to have our enemy ship fire bullets back at the hero's ship. So we need to mess around with our scripts yet again. So how are we going to make that happen? Currently, with the hero ship, we have a function in the hero ship script that checks whether or not the player has clicked on the left mouse button. That's right here. And if so, it then plays a sound and instantiates a bullet. For our enemy ship, obviously we're not going to be checking to see whether the player is pushing a key on the keyboard. We need to automatically cause bullets to come flying out of our enemy ship. So to do that, we can make use of our update function. And inside this update function, we'll want to, oh gosh, there are lots of ways to do it. One way to do it is just to set a variable for the amount of time that you want to pass before a bullet is fired. Then check to see whether that amount of time has passed, and if that amount of time has passed, fire a bullet, and then reset the timer again. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm coming back into my enemy ship modified script, and then I'm going to come up and add a few more public variables to make this work. You remember that our hero ship, when it shoots a bullet, it plays an audio file, so it needs to have an audio file defined as a variable. So we better do that for our enemy ship as well. I'm just giving it the same name. And for our hero ship, we also have a bullet. We have to let the hero ship know where the bullet is to fire it. Same thing with our enemy ship. We're going to need to have a bullet. So I just copied and pasted that over. Then I'm going to set another variable, which is going to be the amount of time I want to elapse between firings of the gun. Now the timing is a little weird inside Unity, but I'm going to start mine off by saying 1,000 for my interval. Then let's come down into our update function, and just like we did with our hero ship, we're going to use the update function in order to fire off bullets. In our case, what we want to do is the following. To check the amount of time that's passed and whether or not we have achieved our interval time, we need to do the following. We're going to take that interval time, this 1,000, and we're going to continuously subtract from it this value, time.delta time. This is a built-in function in Unity that checks the number of seconds since the last frame was rendered. So basically this is a way to take this number and continuously drop it down. This happens really quickly, which is why I've got this sent to a big number. Then, when this number reaches 0, so it's less than or equal to 0, then what we're going to do is we're going to reset our timer. And the way we're going to do that is by having one more variable. This one I set as private because you don't really need to access it from outside the script. And it's also an integer. And it's basically going to be a holder for this value, because this value is going to keep dropping each time we run the script, and so we need a way to remember their starting value, and that's what this is going to hold. So when our timer reaches 0, we're going to reset it by setting it equal to this number. Here you can see we initialized it to be equal to whatever is set in this one here. So it starts off also at 1,000 in our case. Then also when the timer hits 0, we're going to fire our bullets. And to fire our bullets, I've created a new function that I called fire on hero. So I come down here, and what happens inside that function is going to look very familiar because it's the same thing that happens inside our hero ship function. We're going to play our gun firing sound. I'm lazy, so I'm using the same gun firing sound for both the hero ship and the enemy ship. Then we're going to instantiate a bullet. We're going to set the position of that bullet. And in setting the position, we're going to have slightly different code than what we had for the hero ship. In the hero's ship, we want that bullet to appear just above the hero ship. That's why this value is set to 3. For the enemy ship, we want the bullet to appear just below the enemy ship, so we set it to -3. So far, so good. Right now, we're close to having something that will work, but it won't work yet. Do you know why? In the original version of our game, the starter version, you'll remember that we have a bullet prefab. I'll show you. Here it is. And on that bullet prefab, we have a script called bullet. The reason that what we've got right now won't work yet has to do with this script that's on this bullet prefab. Let's take a look at it. Our current default bullet script works like this. When the bullet is created in the scene, it will immediately start to move up at a speed of 100. And then, in our update function, if the bullet reaches the top of the screen, we're going to destroy it. Now, for our enemy ship, that's essentially the exact opposite of what we want to have happen. We want our enemy's ship bullet to move down the screen at whatever speed it is we want to set, and then when the bullet reaches the bottom of the screen, then we want to destroy it. So just like we did with our enemy ship script, we're going to create a new version of the bullet script that we'll use for the enemy bullet, which we also will need to create. So we're going to end up creating a copy of that prefab. So with your bullet script open in MonoDevelop, do a file, save as, and then give it a new name. I called my script enemy bullet. So let's open that up. If you look at the enemy bullet script, it will look very familiar. It's almost exactly like the bullet script. Only in the enemy bullet one, I'm moving the bullet down the screen. I've set it to a relatively slow speed. The slower the speed, the easier it will be for our hero ship to avoid the bullets. I'm hard coding this in. You could set these as public variables so that you could modify the speed of the bullet. That way it's possible you could have varying speeds for your ships. And then I'm checking when the bullet hits the bottom of the screen, and when it hits the bottom of the screen, I'm destroying it. Along with modifying the bullet script for the enemy bullet, I'm going to need to create a new prefab. So here's our bullet prefab with that bullet script attached. What I want to do is just create a duplicate of this. So with it selected in the project view, I go to Edit and choose Duplicate. When I do that, it'll create a new prefab called Bullet 1. That's what this is. I've just simply renamed it Enemy Bullet. So right now, it's just a true copy of the other prefab. In order to make it work appropriately, we need to change it here so that instead of having the bullet script attached to it, it has our newly created enemy bullet script. So I just grabbed that enemy bullet script, dragged it over, and dropped it on there. So now we've got two bullet types, bullet and enemy bullet. Up on our enemy ship object, we've got our newly modified script. So we're getting closer, but we're not quite ready to test this out yet. The last thing we need to do is, if you look here at my enemy ship at the script, there's no slot here for that bullet that we just created. And there's a real simple reason for that, and that's here in MonoDevelop we have yet to save our changes. Then we come back into Unity, and now it will reload, and you'll see now we have some new slots here. We've got one that is looking for an audio clip to play when the bullet fires. So, being lazy, I'll just select the same sound. We're looking for the bullet prefab, and in this case, for the enemy ship, we want the enemy bullet prefab. So we select that, and then we can modify the interval that the bullets fire at. I'll leave it at 1,000 just to see how that works. Save my scene and test it out. When I test it out, something funky happens. We are actually having our ship fire bullets. I hear them firing, but I don't really see anything happening. Can you figure out what the problem is? Let's take a look. Currently, our enemy ship script has a public variable speed. That's how fast our ship is going to move from the top of the screen to the bottom, and it's set to 50. And we've got our enemy bullet script. And the enemy bullet script sets the speed at which the bullet is going to be moving also from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen. If you look at the default values for the enemy ship speed, we've got it set to 50. Meanwhile, our bullet is set to 40. So the speed of the bullet is actually slower than the speed of the ship. So we either need to increase the speed at which our bullet is moving or decrease the speed at which our ship is moving. In my case, I'll increase the speed at which my bullet is moving to 65. Save that, come back into the game and give it a try. So here we are in the game, and it's still, to me, it's not working great. And the reason why is that you can see that you'll get a bullet every once in a while, you can see them coming out. But they're not firing rapidly on my ship. One reason is something that we can easily change. That is to further modify things so that our ship moves slower, for example. Let's save the scene and try that. Now the ship's moving pretty slowly, and we can see our bullets shooting out of the ship. Now, once in a while, you'll hear the sound of a bullet being fired by the enemy ship, but you won't actually see a bullet on the screen. This is a small bug that we don't need to fix for the assignment, but if I were going to make this into a real game, I would fix. And the reason we occasionally hear a bullet fired, but we don't see it on the screen, has to do with when the bullets get destroyed. Currently, we've got the script set up so that if the bullet is positioned off of the bottom of the screen, then it gets destroyed. But it's possible for our bullets to get created when they're off the bottom of the screen. So what can happen is that if the ship itself, the enemy ship, is off the bottom of the screen, and at that moment it creates a new bullet, the bullet will be created, you'll hear it play, and then it will immediately be destroyed, so you'll never see it appear on screen. We're not going to fix that here, but it's something that you would want to fix in a real game. Let's continue moving forward. Now we've got our ship firing away here. I sped it up a little bit so it fires more frequently. But nothing happens, right? If bullets hit the ship, they just pass right through it, and if our enemy ship hits the hero ship, it sort of bumps into it and then continues on its way. So we need to move to the next step, which is to have our poor hero ship get destroyed if it gets hit by a bullet. from the enemy ship, or if the enemy ship itself runs into it. And then we need to start our hero player with 3 lives and then decrease the number of lives by 1 each time the hero ship gets hit by a bullet.